Yo, what's going on, guys? It's EliteMilito back here with my first mock draft of the 2021 NFL Draft. And today I will be doing a team draft. And what that means, I'll be picking for all 32 teams, and I will be picking how I think that the teams will draft, not necessarily my personal opinion on what they should draft. It's what I believe they should draft. So it's really like a prediction more than what I think or what I would do in their situation. So, yep, this will be a 32 team draft, and I'll be picking based off what I think um, teams will draft and how they draft. Because, every team has their certain style of picking. The Seahawks like to take third round prospects in the first round. Although Jordan Brooks did work out, but we're not here to talk about the 2020 draft. We're here to talk about the 2021 draft. And the first pick should be unanimously across the board Trevor Lawrence to the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think it's not even a question, really. He is probably the best quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck back in 2012. And yeah, he is easily the best player in this draft, and probably might end up the best player in this draft a few years down the line. Now the Jets, in my personal opinion, I have Fields just above Zach Wilson. I do have Zach Wilson at 3, but I have Fields at 2. But what I do think will happen, I don't know. It's hard to tell with the Jets. They're really good at making bad decisions. It's hard to tell with Darnold. He's not necessarily the worst quarterback, but I mean, you have no weapons, and also he hasn't gotten better over the seasons. It's hard to tell. I think they will go quarterback. I think they'll go Zach Wilson out of BYU. Once again, I will do a mock draft with my personal opinion. But I do believe the Jets, if they were to take a quarterback, they would take Zach Wilson. Definitely not a bad. I mean, he's not a bad quarterback prospect. 6'3", 210, almost ideal size. He had a really good season at BYU this year. But yeah, so he goes number 2 to the Jets. Now the Dolphins are a little interesting. I've seen Sewell go at 3 to the Dolphins. I've seen Chase, Waddle, Pitts, Devontae Smith all go there, even Rashawn Slater. Personally, I think the Dolphins will look for a playmaker. The thing is, Jamar Chase, and I know this has been brought up more recently in like the news and media, but Jamar Chase is a lot like Devontae Parker and Preston Williams, who the Dolphins already have. Kind of go up and get it. Receivers, 50-50 ball. I mean, Jamar Chase, I think, could end up better than those guys, but I mean, you already have 2 of those receivers, not a lot of separation. Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle. I would say that the Dolphins might pick, if they don't know what to do, they would probably go with, they go with Sewell at 3. I think he's probably the best tackle prospect in this draft, even though I do like Rashawn Slater a lot, and I do like Christian Darrisaw a lot. I think Penei Sewell is probably the best tackle prospect in this class. And the Falcons, that leaves Fields at 4 for them to take. I do think that the Falcons will take a quarterback. I think it just makes too much sense. Take one of them, Zach Wilson or Justin Fields, whoever goes to 4. Have them sit behind Matt Ryan, or at least for a little bit, because they can't cut him. They would lose money doing that. So they have to wait a year to cut him. And I think having quarterbacks sit behind him isn't necessarily the worst option. They could have went receiver there, I guess. They could have certainly went Micah Parsons, who is the best defensive player in this class. And I think the Bengals also have an interesting pick. I think this is an interesting draft, and I know it'll be more clear after free agency. When I'm recording this, free agency has just started, so teams' intentions will be more clear after free agency. But when you have Trevor Lawrence going at 1, Wilson at 2, Sewell at 3, Fields at 4, I think this draft really up until, I don't know, this entire first round seems really, a lot of teams have multiple directions to go with each pick. Especially the Bengals here. They could go Jamar Chase, bring him back with Joe Burrow. That is really interesting and hard to pass up on. But you know that he needs protection. It's not exactly a sexy pick, but I think Rashawn Slater is probably the best tackle. Like I said, Sewell's the best prospect, but I think Slater is the best player right now. And you Chase, you're losing AJ Green. You still have Tyler Boyd, who's probably he's very underrated top 5 receiver in the slot. T. Higgins definitely exceeded expectations. He was definitely a good player last year. It's really hard to pass up on a Burrow and Chase. I know Burrow would want Jamar Chase probably here, but you also need to protect him. It's really interesting, but I think you have to go. No, it's just too. I would say Slater. The Bengals have to go Slater. Remember, in my personal opinion, maybe I would go Chase there, but I'm picking for the Bengals. They do like to pick offensive line in the first round, even though it hasn't really worked out. They have Billy Price, not too bad. But Rashawn Slater, Jonah Williams also not too bad, I guess. But Rashawn Slater can really play anywhere on the offensive line, and you need someone to protect Burrow, man. He was getting destroyed even before his injury. But I'm sure he'll come back better than ever next season, and Slater can help keep him protected. Now, this should, without a question, be Jamar Chase here, but the Eagles are really bad. Like, they're just bad. Overall, Howie Roseman is not exactly great, but I think if you have Jamar Chase right there, you don't have any clear choice. Now, here at 7, I think the Lions, I think they have to stick with Goff for a little bit, so they might try and build up around him. They could go Waddle or Devontae Smith here. They could go defense. They could go Micah Parsons, but I think that they can't really necessarily give up on Goff yet without giving him a chance. And also, you're paying him way too much to not even see what he can bring to the table, even though we know what he can bring to the table. It's Jared Goff. So I think you have to get him a weapon, and I think you're losing, and they need a receiver. They're losing Galladay and Marvin Jones. So it's really about preference here. I think Devontae Smith obviously had the better season, Heisman Trophy winner. But I think you would go Waddle here. You can get him. He doesn't necessarily have to play in the slot, but he can, and he's also fast. You saw with the Raiders last year, they took Henry Ruggs, and although he might have not had the greatest statistical season, when you have someone with that speed, you're clearing out the defense for other receivers. And I think that's what Jalen Waddle can bring to the table. I don't think like Henry Ruggs and Waddle are necessarily they're comparable. They're both shorter guys, much faster guys. I think Ruggs is probably just a little bit faster than Waddle. But they can both high point the football, go up and get the football, which is something new. There's always receivers like that, but Waddle and Ruggs back to back, both smaller, faster guys that can still go up and get the football. That's a good pick there for the Lions. They can't really go wrong. So Panthers, you could go Pitts, you could go Parsons. You could go Devontae Smith, but I think you have to go Trey Lance here. If he's available, I don't see Matt Rule and the Panthers passing him up. Teddy Bridgewater, no pun intended, bridge quarterback. Not necessarily the worst. He was pretty good, or decent enough this past season. Definitely better than Cam Newton or Kirk Cousins or anyone like that, I think. But yeah, I think Trey Lance, you could have him even sit for a year. I think that the Panthers could cut Bridgewater potentially. I know they would also like to go after Deshaun Watson, but that hasn't happened yet, and the Texans have given no leeway into trading. They don't want to trade him, and I wouldn't either if I were the Texans. But I mean, you did mess up pretty much for the past 2 seasons up to this point. But anyway, we're at the Broncos pick, and this has to be a corner. I would say they go Farley out of Virginia Tech. Definitely a good prospect. 6'2", almost 200 pounds. I mean, that's something you love to see out of a corner. I mean, that is great size for the position. And then it's hard to say here. They could go, the Cowboys could go Darisaw. They could go Parsons. They could go Surtain. Now, I think personally, you're getting Jalen Smith, Leighton Vander Esch back. Sean Lee is most likely, I mean, he's on your team to be a coach, or he's going to retire probably. You could go Parsons here. I think they're going to go Surtain because they're losing a lot of corners. It's a big need for them. And, yeah, that really is, I mean, the Cowboys, a lot of these teams here, really 5 up until probably the Cardinals at pick 16 can't go wrong. There's a lot of decent players at high valued positions at corner, tackle, quarterback. There is not a lot of edge. It's not exactly a great edge class, but it's not the worst either. Now the Giants here, I think you have to go Micah Parsons. Certainly, in my opinion, like I said, the best defensive player in the class. The Giants are my favorite team, so maybe a little bias there. But, yeah, you need linebacker. Devontae Smith, you could give Daniel Jones some weapons, but we're talking about the best defensive player in the class. The defense was definitely a top 10 defense this past season, and that could maybe even move it to the top 5. People forget how good Micah Parsons is. He didn't play this past season, opted out for COVID, but yeah, people forget that he is definitely one of the best, if not the best, defensive player in this class. Now the 49ers, this puts them at a bit of a weird situation here. You could go Mac Jones, but I mean, is that better than Garoppolo? Probably not. You're not going to take Najee Harris here at 12. You're most likely going with Devontae Smith or your Trent Williams replacement in Christian Darisaw, and I think that's most likely what you do here. You're kind of stuck. Even if Trent Williams returns, I mean, Darisaw can move into guard, I think, or I mean, he can just wait a little bit. Now at 13, the Chargers, I would say go Sam Cosmi. You got to protect Herbert. So 2 tackles back to back. Now the Vikings, Elijah Vera Tucker, I would say, can play guard, can play tackle. That's really what the Vikings do need. Their guards last year were pretty bad, and Elijah Vera Tucker can easily slide in there. Now, this is kind of weird, but I have Kyle Pitts falling all the way to 15 and going to the New England Patriots. And that's not because I don't think Kyle Pitts is a good player. I would say Kyle Pitts is probably a better player than Jalen Waddle. So, I mean, I think Kyle Pitts is probably a top 10 player in this class. But, I mean, it's all about Kyle Pitts, tight end. People don't really like to take tight ends in the first round. But just today, Cam Newton was re-signed by the Patriots. I predicted that all along, obviously not on this channel, but I knew that was going to happen. And so that gives them a weapon at least. I hope that they go after one in free agency for Cam. In my personal opinion, I don't think Cam is actually that bad of a quarterback. Yes, he's not exactly MVP Cam, but he's still decent enough and definitely a top 32 quarterback. Now here you have to go J.C. Horn. If you're the Cardinals, you're losing Patrick Peterson. You need a cornerback to play on the outside, and J.C. Horn can certainly do that. Now the Raiders, you probably need to go edge here, but you have Devontae Smith here. You do need weapons, but I would say you go Kwity Paye here, especially John Gruden, Mike Mayock. They do like to take high-valued positions. They like to take wide receiver, defensive back, tackle, stuff like that. And edge is certainly a high-valued position, and Kwity Paye at 17 to the Raiders. Now, it's hard to say that this would happen, but Devontae Smith falls all the way down to 18 to the Miami Dolphins. Teams back up with Tua Tagovailoa. Dolphins get their separator. And that's a pretty good first round for the Miami Dolphins, getting Sewell to protect Tua and Devontae Smith, true separator. Exactly not the type of the same receiver as Devontae Parker and Preston Williams. Has that speed, has the quickness to get off the line, get off the press, and have separation. And that's pretty good for the Miami Dolphins. Now here, I'm going to have probably in every mock draft Mac Jones, unless he gets picked somewhere else, which I doubt, to the Washington football team. I think it makes too much sense. A lot of reports have said Mac Jones is a leader and someone a lot of guys look up to and believe in. And, if we're being honest, that's pretty much the opposite of what Dwayne Haskins did in Washington. And honestly, you could make a case that Mac Jones is as good or even a little bit worse than Dwayne Haskins skill-wise. But that leadership can bring other players into really buying in and wanting to play for you, creating separation, times they shouldn't, going up to get the ball, fighting for the ball, stuff like that. And if you don't believe in your quarterback, what is your reason to do that? And I think Mac Jones does bring leadership, and that's what the football team does need. And they also need a quarterback. And the Chicago Bears also do need a quarterback now. I don't think that they would take Trask here. I know Kellen Mond has been getting a lot of hype recently. Those are pretty much the only two guys that you would consider taking there at quarterback. But I think you need a weapon for, I would say you're most likely bringing Trubisky back, at least on a 1-year deal probably. And Rashad Bateman, the Bears did franchise tag Allen Robinson, most likely going to trade him at his request. And I think that Rashad Bateman is similar. I think that's a really good comparison. Rashad Bateman compares to Allen Robinson. I think that's a perfect comparison. And if you're losing Allen Robinson, now I'm not saying with any of these guys, when I compare them to another player, that they are necessarily going to reach that level. But it's a good comparison, like size, speed-wise. Of course, we've seen how players play in college, but that doesn't necessarily always translate into the NFL. There's a million examples. Now, the Colts here, I think that did they let go of Costanzo or did he retire? Either way, they need a left tackle. Does Tevin Jenkins, did he play right tackle at OK State? let's see. He's played guard and tackle, both tackles. All right. I think you could go edge here, but I think you go Tevin Jenkins. You need someone to replace Anthony Costanzo. Even he might have not even left the Colts, but even if he didn't, you need someone there when he does. And I think Tevin Jenkins, he's also been getting a lot of hype here. And that is honestly, if you're going into the draft, that's the best time to be getting hype. You think about in college, Bryce Love was getting, hype his entire career, and then suddenly it died down during draft time. That's the worst time to not have media and stuff like hyping you up, all that. Tevin Jenkins has definitely been climbing up the draft board, which is good to see for him. Now, edge here for the Titans, I think they have to go edge. It's either Jalen Phillips or Azeez Ojulari. Azeez Ojulari is my edge one in this class, or I don't know. I'd say Kwity Paye is probably my edge one, and then you have Jalen Phillips and Azeez Ojulari at edge 2A and 2B. So right here, it's more about scheme fit. I think Ojulari makes a lot of sense for the Titans' defensive scheme. He play outside linebacker. He is more the size. I think his 40 was also his what's it called? His unofficial 40 was pretty fast. They did take a Georgia player last year, Isaiah Wilson. Didn't exactly turn out too well. Traded to the Dolphins this offseason already. I do think Jalen Phillips is a good player, don't get me wrong. But I just think Ojulari fits the Titans scheme a little more, or a little better. Now the Jets, they've already taken Zach Wilson with the second pick. Now here you can either go defense, but I would say if you're the Jets here, you have to go best player available. You do need edge. You need a lot of stuff if you're the Jets, to be honest. But you could go Najee Harris or ETN. I think you're seeing edge. This isn't exactly a great edge class. It's not exactly a great class for the D-line, to be honest. There's definitely more value down the board, especially for edge and defensive line in general. So I think you would go Travis Etienne here, pair him up with Zach Wilson. In my opinion, I think that Najee Harris, who's going to the Pittsburgh Steelers right here, is the number one running back in the class. But like I said, I think the Jets would pick ETN over Harris. Steelers fans are convinced that they need a running back, and the Steelers do like to, kind of take their fans. I mean, they like to please their fans. I do think that Jalen Mayfield would definitely fit their offensive line perfectly. You're losing Pouncey, retired. You're potentially losing Alejandro Villanueva. And, your O-line is definitely getting worse this offseason. I think Jalen Mayfield would make a lot of sense there. But I think Najee Harris is also the best running back in the class. And the Steelers really do need that bruiser type. And Najee Harris also has speed. Not as fast as ETN, but definitely fast. I think the Steelers go Harris at 24. Now the Jags, you're probably going best player available. Not Jalen Phillips. They took Caleb on Chase on last year. Could go receiver here. I would say you're most likely going Jalen Mayfield to protect Trevor Lawrence. I think the Jags might lose Cam Robinson in free agency, and that's something you need to you need a tackle. If you could draft your franchise quarterback and franchise tackle in the same draft, that would be perfect. The Browns here, I think they do go. They could go. They're in a good spot here. They could go Jalen Phillips or Owusu Koromoa. You take edge over inside linebacker any day when you have the chance. And it also screws their rivals, the Ravens, I think. Now they definitely need some help at receiver. It's take your pick here. I think these four guys these four guys could be picked in the first round, and they could also fall to the third round. I mean, who knows? But I think the Ravens, they do need edge. Your choices are most likely Gregory Rousseau or your choices are really Jason Owe or Gregory Rousseau. And I would say it's probably worth more to get a receiver, a big body receiver. You can have Terrence Marshall Jr. and Marquise Brown. You have the speed and you have the physicality. Lamar Jackson, I don't know why. Like, a lot of people have really been hating on Lamar Jackson, and I'm not a Ravens fan or anything like that, but people forget he was an MVP. I mean, not even 3 years ago, 2 years ago, he was the MVP of the NFL, and it's not because, of course he's a good runner, but he's also a pretty good passer. I don't know why there's all this unnecessary hate on Lamar Jackson, but I think he's definitely a top 10 quarterback in the league right now. So, yeah, give him another weapon with Terrence Marshall Jr. Now, the Saints, they need cornerback. They need edge. And the Saints are weird about picking in the first round, so I think that they would probably go Jason Owe. He ran, what did I see, a 4.38 40. That's pretty crazy, actually, but I honestly believe it because, he ran a 4.38, and what did Parsons run, a 4.44? Owe is pretty athletic, and the Saints are losing Trey Hendrickson. You have Cam Jordan on the other side. Hendrickson cleaned up a lot of the time, and you can get Owe to do that. You have Cam Jordan rushing on the other side. Trey Hendrickson really just cleaned up a lot of the time. So, yeah. 29 Packers, they need a weapon. And I think, honestly, I'm between two players here. Kadarius Toney and Greg Newsome. I think they're both good players. I think you need to go Toney here. He's definitely a separator as well. Definitely a good player. The Bills just re-signed Matt Milano today. They needed. I'd say they probably go Rousseau here, just because they need an edge, and he's definitely a development. He's definitely a project developmental guy. So yeah, I think that would fit them really well. The Chiefs, they need tackle. They definitely need tackle. They released Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. They have to go Eichenberg here. They could go Dylan Raduns, but yeah, I think you have to take a tackle there. Now the Bucs, I don't know. In my opinion, they probably get back Shaq Barrett. It's hard to say here where they would go. I would say their team is just pretty good. Their interior offensive line, they have quarterback on here as needs. That's funny. Their team is just really good if you're thinking about every position. Even players that aren't, named, like you don't know their name, they just played out of their mind, especially in that Super Bowl. But yeah, I would say they're most likely going Christian Barmore here, interior defensive lineman out of Alabama, has a lot of potential. And if you're picking, the last pick in the first round, you might as well go potential at a position of need. I think that makes sense for them. So, yeah, this is officially my first mock draft of the 2021 NFL draft season, off season as well. And I want to thank you guys for watching here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and have a good rest.